At 7 years old, an Indian boy was sent to England with strict instructions from his father. He was to receive an entirely Western education with no exposure to the culture or religions of his homeland. He spent 14 years absorbing Greek, Latin, and European history. But when Sri Aurobindo returned to India in 1893, he began to study Sanskrit and local languages, quickly assimilating the very traditions he had been kept from. Within a few years, he stepped directly into the political arena. Through his role editing the daily newspaper Bande Mataram, he openly rejected the moderate, slow reform approach favored by the older leadership of the Indian National Congress. Instead, he demanded Purna Swaraj, complete independence from British rule. He mapped out a strategy of absolute non-cooperation, advocating for the boycott of British goods, courts, and universities in favor of national education and passive resistance. These editorials changed the direction of Indian politics. By 1908, the British authorities viewed this Cambridge-trained scholar as the primary ideological head of the most aggressive wing of the nationalist movement. In May 1908, the colonial police initiated a crackdown, arresting Sri Aurobindo in the Alipur bomb case. He spent a full year as an under-trial prisoner, locked in solitary confinement. He faced the very real threat of execution for his alleged ties to armed revolutionary groups. Stripped of his freedom, he began practicing intense yoga. In that cell, his perception shifted. He reported experiencing an omnipresent divine reality, seeing it in the prison bars, the trees outside, and even the guards and the magistrate trying to convict him. When the trial concluded, the prosecution failed to prove his involvement. He walked out of Alipur jail in 1909 a free man, but his perspective on the struggle for freedom had changed. He concluded that a change in government was insufficient. He realized that political independence would not solve human suffering unless human consciousness itself evolved. He then withdrew from the nationalist movement to pursue this new objective. To evade further British prosecution, he sailed down the coast in 1910 to find sanctuary in Pondicherry, a French enclave out of British jurisdiction. Despite repeated requests from his peers to return and lead the National Congress, he refused. He secluded himself to chart a new spiritual methodology, which he called integral yoga. 4 years into his silent retreat, he launched a philosophical monthly journal titled The Arya. Over the next 6.5 years, he wrote an enormous volume of material for the journal. He serialized massive theoretical works month by month, most notably The Life Divine and The Synthesis of Yoga. Leaving behind newspaper editorials, he used the pages of the Arya to meticulously detail a set of mechanics for human evolution. This timeline maps the evolution of consciousness, from unconscious matter to biological life, eventually reaching the human mind. Evolution doesn't stop with us. The mind is a transitional midpoint. The required leap involves ascending to the supermind, a truth consciousness, where reality is understood through unity. Many traditional spiritual paths frame the physical world as an illusion to escape. Integral yoga demands the opposite. It requires the practitioner to ascend to this higher consciousness, gather its power, and bring it back down into the physical body. The objective is not to abandon Earth for a distant heaven, but to actively transform matter and create a divine life directly within the material world. To give this vast philosophy an accessible, living form, he spent his later years composing a blank verse epic called Savitri, a legend and a symbol. He took a short episode from the Mahabharata, a story about a princess whose love conquers the god of death, and expanded it into a detailed cartography of his own inner experiences. The drafting process spanned decades. The earliest surviving manuscripts trace back to 1916. He treated the work as a literal field of experimentation. As his own yogic consciousness deepened, he continually rewrote the poem's 24,000 lines from those newly reached planes, striving to capture what he called mantric poetry. Sri Aurobindo designed the poem's rhythmic and sonic structure to function as a catalyst, intended to trigger a shift in the reader's internal state. When Sri Aurobindo passed away in 1950, his thousands of pages of theory were ready to be tested in physical reality. The continuation of his work fell to his spiritual collaborator, a French-born mystic named Mira Alfassa. Known to disciples as the Mother, she had managed the practical growth of his ashram since 1926. In 1968, she launched Aurobindo. Built on a barren plateau in South India, this international township was constructed as a living laboratory, a dedicated space to practice his theories of human unity and evolutionary progress on a societal scale. The Cambridge scholar who shook the British Empire ended up aiming far past the borders of India. From radical political articles printed in secret to an epic poem of spiritual ascension, his writings serve as an active blueprint for the next stage of human existence.